That's kind of a dirty trick, isn't it, with that air horn? If you're tuning in with me tonight, let me know that you're here. Uh, Let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments. Tonight we're going to be doing a bit of a drawing class, and our lighting situation, our camera situation is a little bit different this time, and you'll see why in just a minute. But if you're new here, my name is Paige. I'm the Chief Pixel Pusher and Paintbrusher here at Gumption Works and Paige Weber Art. And today, normally we do a watercolor class, but today we're going to be doing some drawing classes because I feel wholeheartedly that if you want to improve your painting, it starts with your drawing. And so I think a lot of my students have been really wanting to do a little bit of drawing. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So tonight we're going to draw a kingfisher. This is an image that I got through a free images resource group on Facebook, and you can find them if you're looking for things to draw. And this is, oh, that's not the right one. Where is my image? There it is. This is the kingfisher that we're going to be drawing, and it is an image by Les Little. So thanks, Les, for sharing your imagery so other people can draw it. And it looks like Laurel is here tonight. Welcome, Laurel. So glad that you can be part of our class tonight. And I might have to switch this up a little bit. It's not letting me do some things. So bear with me as our lighting and our angles are a little bit different. One of the big things that's different for me in this class is that I am drawing kind of on an easel, upright easel. If you are drawing, that's kind of ideal to be able to draw upright because you can really see what you're looking at. You can also kind of get away from what you're looking at and drawing, and move that shoulder and kind of draw from the shoulder instead of a tight little pencil. So we will start very loosely with this drawing, and then we will whittle down into some detail. I'm going to turn on this light behind me, which will be really pretty bright, and we'll change up our screen here a little bit. And you can see, let's see if my light will kick on. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. This camera, we have a couple different camera angles here. And so, yes. And let me know if this looks any different than our normal class structure, because we got a little bit faster internet, and I'm hoping that it offers a faster and better image, maybe less lag. I'm not sure if that will be the case, but so first of all, I want you to take a look at my pencils. I like to take an X-Acto knife sometimes to my sketching pencils and kind of carve away the excess wood. This kind of gives you a little bit more area to work in, and it allows you to feel looser, I think. If you don't have this with your pencils, don't worry. Just keep it in mind as you are going to be moving forward in your drawing career. Also, I have this instrument that I don't use very often, but it has an official name. It is a proportional scale divider. And what it allows you to do is you can measure, oftentimes when we're drawing, we can measure, say, the head. How big is the head? In comparison to other positions of the body. This is a great measuring tool to get your proportions more accurate. Usually we just pick one bit of the body and use that for the whole drawing. Again, I'm kind of sorry about this light, but I think that is okay for you. So keep it in mind that they make tools like this for drawing, and I may use it in this class a little bit. If you don't have one, you can use your pencil. A lot of artists use their pencil. They hold their pencil out in front of them like this, and they measure this way. This is also a great tool to see how things are angled. So sometimes you think you know how something's angled, and it might be a little bit different than what you think. So if I want to look at the head on our bird, I might use this pencil, let's see, there we go, to adjust, to be able to say, okay, that's at that angle. I'm looking at my resource here, and then I can take it over to my paper and go, oh, it should be at this angle. It just helps you kind of visualize that a little bit better. It's just another tool. So you don't need a fancy tool to do this. You just need really a pencil. And what else can I tell you? I may get into using some mechanical pencils later in this lesson. So there is that. You'll also want to have maybe an eraser eventually that you can use to erase some of your marks. All right, I'm sure there's more, but the last thing I would say is oftentimes I'll use a piece of paper so I'm not dragging my hand across my paper in my drawing and making a mess. So you might want to have just a spare piece of paper handy with a little bit of tape on there so you can just tape it in place once you get going. Okay, so I debated whether to do this digitally, but we're going to do it with our pencils. And you can see here, maybe, I'm using a 2H and a 2B, and we're going to start with this 2H pencil. And we can kind of look at gestures. So we can look at our image, which I'm going to move my image in front of me, so that's a little bit handier. Bear with me here as we get started. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments as we go, because I can still see comments here with my setup. if my fingers will work here. Okay. So I'm looking at my image. I'm looking at the beak of the bird. I'm looking at basically his kind of gesture and the angles that he is at. And so I can kind of see that he's angled this way, and maybe he's angled sort of this way. So I'm keeping that in mind. So first we know what our gesture might be or the angle that he's at. We need to really loosely kind of decide where we want this bird on our paper. So we can roughly sketch in kind of the outer shape of this bird. We don't have to get too perfect in it. We're going to be changing a lot. I found that was the case with my sketch. And I don't know if you can see this very well. It's very light probably on your end. Don't worry, it will become more noticeable here. But just so we start with the big shapes so we can move down to the smaller shapes. You don't want to start with the eye or start with little tiny details before you figure out where you want your bird on your page, because you want it to be easy to adjust. So I kind of have this line that goes this way. You can take your pencil and you can look, like when I look at the picture, it's a little more downward maybe. So I can kind of adjust that. And then this side curves around. Okay. By being able to see where we have these things, we are able to see where we're positioned on the page, and we can get started sketching our bird. The other thing that you want to do is you want to be able to look at different areas of the bird and sight down or sight right or left. So if I look at that eye and I hold out my pencil looking at my bird, I can see that the edge of the eye, the very edge of the eye, kind of aligns with his body. So I can just sight that with a line. And by doing that, you are able to more accurately render your bird. Like there's a portion, let's see, you can't see it on my camera. I will make this a little bit smaller. There's a portion of, there we go, this area that aligns with this part of the head, so you can use your pencil to see where that sights align. So these are just ways that you can sight accurately, or at least start looking for those things, so you can more accurately replicate an image. Okay, so first I'm gonna start figuring out where I think his wings are. And I'm going to switch up this pencil a little bit so we can kind of have, so you can see it a little bit, because I think that's going to help. Hopefully you can see it all right in my camera. So we have kind of this back of the head, we have a curve here, still sketching loosely because we want to be able to erase anything or draw over anything that might be need to be fixed. And when I look at this head, as I measure with my pencil, I'm looking at the size of the head in comparison to that beak. And it's kind of equal, almost equal parts. So I know if I split it here, maybe that beak is going to be about the same distance of the head part. So I can just sketch in this beak. This is where this tool comes in. If you had such a thing, you could also just use a piece of paper and mark the head size on a piece of paper. Oops, come on now. So you could say, well, this, it's pretty close, but I need to bring that beak out a little bit more, right? And then you can use that measurement to measure all your other parts. So now you can just sketch if you want to. I think the bird is about maybe 2.5 heads tall. We'll kind of get him roughed in here. And again, I can look at angles like this and look at my picture. Okay, so my angle is like this on my picture. I can bring it over to my page and make sure that I have it at the right angle. This wing curves out a little bit, kind of curves around. You can also kind of estimate where this tail goes. Might have to do a little bit of adjustment here, but you're just starting to plot marks. I can draw through here. I can see I need to go out a little bit more on this side. And this might be something, you know, we are preparing this drawing for our painting next week in our private class. This could be something that maybe you're really going to perfect, and or maybe it's just you're going to do an outline drawing of your bird. I just wanted you to be able to find a way to approach this drawing a little bit. But you can see, you know, what I love about birds is they're curved. They're a little bit easier than to say draw a deer with all the legs, and you know, you have a bit of a blobby body, if you will, depending on how they are situated. And I'll see if anybody's made a comment here, if anybody has any questions. Okay. Does this have to be perfect? Not at all. This is, you're learning and you're drawing on your own. The fact that you're here with me drawing is awesome. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're not, if you don't draw all the time. This is, you know, we're learning here. And even this is, even my body's off a little bit. Let's see, did I? All right. I think I got a thumbs up. Thank you. And I can see that this body, this curve here goes all the way through. It doesn't matter. We can draw it through this wing here. I see that I'm kind of off the paper here a little bit, but I'll try to turn it so you can see it a little. So always kind of look for those things where you might need to draw that curve all the way through. You can erase it later. I also want to place my eye. I'm kind of looking at it. I'm taking my pencil, kind of looking at it this way to see where that eye is placed. And the back of that eye kind of aligns with this area. So I can just make a mark there. And sometimes I just kind of shade in that area a little bit, very lightly. So, you know, if we need to adjust it later, we can do that. But you can kind of note how a curve is, the negative space that's in here you can look at. Maybe this is a little bit flatter. I do think it would be fun to do a little bit longer class here on YouTube that was just a drawing, kind of a drawing class like this. I'm going to lift this up a little bit. Sometimes you also find that you can easily alter an area or lift an area to make it more proportionate. But you can see our bird's already starting to look like a bird. And you can kind of note, like here, we have some back feathers that come this way. We have some shading that happens here. So this little whoop-de-whoop there. And it can be really fun just to start exploring shapes and how they are related to one another. Now, my friend Boyd, he was an overachiever today. He already has done one drawing today, so I'm curious to know if he'll be drawing with us again today. But it's great practice. You did a great job, Boyd. And I'm always grateful that you share your work with me. Super cool. So I can see I need to thin out this beak a little bit here. And you notice I'm not hitting the eraser yet because we're just making delicate kind of marks. We're making pretty good progress. I'm just kind of noting for myself, like there is some shading that happens here. This is part of this wing. And this is a little bit lighter in our image. And then maybe I need to figure out where this branch is a little bit in relation to my bird. Again, this is what's called drawing through, so I can draw through and see where it would connect on that other side. I highly recommend you do that when you're drawing things because it is noticeable sometimes if you don't. And kind of see where this connects on our bird body. Now, organic shapes like this are pretty fun because they can be scribbly. And again, if you're going to paint this, I guess we should talk about briefly like, okay, so you've done this very detailed drawing. How are you going to paint it? Well, you don't have to draw a very detailed drawing. If you are drawing on your watercolor paper, you might just do what I'm doing, make some notes, and then erase out the bits that are still pretty light, right? You can erase them out and continue to paint on that paper. Or like with this drawing here that you can see here, maybe I'm going to take tracing paper to that and transfer it from the tracing paper to my watercolor paper. You can do that as well. Sometimes artists will do that. They draw the animal or whatever it is, and then they transfer it to a canvas. And so, and it's very helpful, I think, when you are painting, because then you are very informed as to the subject matter that you're painting. So right now I'm going to look and see what angle these wings are at, because we have some floof over here. I want to see, where does it end? Where does it align on the body if I went straight across? It's kind of mid-wing, maybe. This is also where a ruler comes in pretty handy to you if you want to sight things. I think I'll just take it kind of across the body here. Just look at the angle of things. You might be adjusting. I'm looking at where the foot is here and how it's very hard to really distinguish what's going on with this little foot, other than there's a little bit of floof here. But you can just put that in there. I can tell you if you're doing animals and you don't do their feet, that's kind of noticeable too. So don't be afraid to actually look at the shape. What angle is it at? Like I can see I could improve my angle here a little. And just break it down into bigger shapes to smaller shapes. Now, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in chat. I don't want to leave anybody out if you have a question or you get hung up somewhere. So you can see I got pretty close to the edge down here, which is similar to our image that we're working from tonight. I also can see that I can maybe bring down some of these feathers. And we have, so these feathers go at an angle this way. And then we have some feathers that go down kind of at an angle this way behind them. So you can, maybe you want to draw those in. Okay. Let's see here. All right. So I'm just kind of continually assessing my bird. We have some things that are happening at this front eye. There's some floof in here, and it's a little bit hard for me to see with my middle-aged eyes, but I'm kind of looking at that too, which I will just make this a little bit bigger for myself. What's nice is you want to see the overall bird and see the overall picture of what you're looking at to get it on your paper here. But then you are able to zoom in if you have the image, and you can kind of see, okay, what's happening here. We have a little bit of this whoop-de-whoop here. Maybe the eyes at this angle might curve up this way. Again, how's it aligning with my body? I think I'm doing pretty good there. Might need to make some adjustments. But you don't want to stay too long in this zone. just because you want to be able to make sure that your proportions are correct. Beaks are kind of super interesting if you look at them really up close, because oftentimes they'll come out. That's a little too far back here, but that's okay. They come out here. We have this area here that extends past the eye that's connecting here. Let's see, can I zoom you in a little bit? You can kind of just see a little bit of detail. If you have trouble seeing things, let me know. We can adjust things. We've got this little nostril hole, we'll call it. So I have a pretty good base right now, right? I could go back in and start exploring some details. I mean, let me say, I can explore some more details, but I also can put more definitive lines in here as well. But always be looking at your angles, because I can see, well, there's this curve here. Maybe it curves a little bit more. But by now, you know, you can kind of get started readjusting, correcting, and defining some areas. You will also probably get to this point in your drawing where maybe you need to put down a little bit of a piece of a barrier here. Like you can see, it's a little hard to see, but I can put down this paper barrier so I'm not dragging my hand through the ink or the pencil there. So I'm just going to do that. It does obscure my other bird, but we still have this bird. Maybe I can make him a little bit bigger for you guys. Maybe over here, if you're drawing along with me. Maybe that will help you. Now, if you're a student, you should have gotten a workbook. That should have given you this bird. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in, just still looking at some of these details. Do you need a fancy pencil like this? No, you do not. You could use, you know, a sharper point this way, or like I was using this 2B pencil before. But I like the crispy lines that I can get with this pencil. So if you don't have a fancy pencil, you don't need one. But here I can start kind of, I needed to erase in there so I could kind of see how am I gonna do this line. The other thing that you can do actually at this stage is I can take my kneaded eraser and I can kind of make it a long tube. And then if I want to lift a little bit of my pencil, I can do that just like that. Hopefully you can see it pretty good here. And I can just lift a little bit of that pigment so we can go in with some more definitive lines. So I'm looking at this wing. And the reason I have this upright is because oftentimes I get things pretty wonky if I'm looking down on it. And not only that, but it becomes kind of challenging for your neck, at least my neck. I have issues with my neck from spending years looking down at drawings. And so having it upright where you can see it is really beneficial and helpful and better for you, I think, in the long run. So we kind of have this wing that connects here. And I kind of skip around at this point, but probably it'd be wise to kind of go through your outline here. Now I know that I'm going to use this image to, I'm going to trace off of this image that I've drawn for our watercolor class that's coming next week. But if you aren't, if you're going to just use the paper itself, you might do some light lines. I see this kind of curves here. And then you've got these fun feathers here. Now we're in prime birding season right now. I learned recently that there's an area that is a pond near me in Pocatello, and they have, I was told, 100 different types of birds hanging out there right now this summer. So when you start drawing, don't be surprised if you start birding a little, if you like drawing these guys. Now I can see just looking at this that this can come a little bit lower. So you're always kind of looking and noting things when we're drawing. And by not getting too invested early on, you can make some adjustments a little bit easily. So I'm going to move our camera here. Maybe that will kind of help. I really struggled with a good camera angle where I'd be actually able to kind of draw. So I promise I will get it figured out eventually. Okay. So you can go in if you want to at this stage, maybe erase some things or adjust them. Feathers can be really challenging to draw. Just one of the hard things to keep in mind is to draw what you see. Some of the best drawing advice, because oftentimes we're drawing what we don't really know is there. There's this little bump here. It's kind of a curve. And then we get into our feathers. I'll zoom out here a little bit. Okay. I need music in this live stream, don't I? Usually I'm really pretty much yammering on, so. A nice curve here. So if you're looking for, if you like painting and drawing, one of my favorite artists I noticed is on YouTube, a lot more active these days. And so you might check out David Casson. Years ago, I got one of his DVDs. This tells you how long ago it was, where he did exactly this, except for it was with an oil painting, and he started with a drawing, and he transferred that drawing to canvas, and created a beautiful painting out of it. Okay, we're doing pretty good, I think, with time. Now, if you aren't moving as fast as I am, also cut yourself a little bit of slack. Just do your best, and you can replay this if you want to. So if I have a little bit of time, I'll let you guys vote. Do you want me to do a little bit of shading on this to show you how I would approach drawing and shading it? Let me know in the comments there. So I'm always kind of looking at the eyes. There's always more to the eyes than we think, and this is so small we don't necessarily have to be super detailed, but we have these fine feathers that are underneath the eye there. It'd be like similar to eyelashes. And so I can lift this area a little bit. Maybe. Kind of maybe zoom in a little bit here. And there's this kind of interesting area here. We have a color change here. And actually this, the nice thing about a mechanical pencil is it's always sharp. Okay, so I can see where here I have some through lines that I've used for aligning things this way and assessing that. So I can probably tap those out a little bit. And we might just kind of loosely kind of sketch this in. It's there are little feathers that run along here. Now, if you have questions or you're like, this is too complex, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be interested to see what you think there. And I can kind of see it's sort of funny when you start drawing, you can see things you didn't maybe see before. Like there's this little leg here. And when we're drawing, when we oftentimes we use a thicker line to outline something and use thinner lines to do the internal lines. You'll see that a lot with line work or illustration. So that's something to know as you maybe embark on more drawing in your life. If something overlaps something else, the thing that's in front will have a thicker line around it as opposed to what's in the background. So just some things to keep in mind when we do drawing. I feel like even this and really if you get serious about drawing, standing away from your drawing to assess the image that you're working from, to assess whether things are off proportionally is really wise to do. It will make better drawings for you, and you'll catch things that you don't normally see. And that applies for people who are painting as well. Sometimes people will take a picture and flip it upside down, or they'll use a mirror and look into the mirror at the image as well. Sometimes you can spot things that are off that way. And so those are just some tips for drawing. Got this nice little highlight here in the eye. I usually wait to do those highlights last, but sometimes in the eye you just can lighten something. It can help to give it a little bit of life. So some correcting to do here. Oops, the angle of that is kind of off. That's okay. I also want to know if you're a regular to this channel, do you want to see more drawing content? We do a lot of watercolor content here because, that's what I started doing during COVID when I couldn't teach. But maybe you want to see drawing things. And this really applies to my students as well. What's great about watercolor is you get to learn to mix colors and play with it. But some of my students are kind of wanting something a little bit different, a little fresher. So all right. And Jan says that she would like more drawing. So I like that. Let's do that. I kind of like this format where we draw something and we paint it. So when I get to see you again, you have to let me know how you feel about that as well. But I do think that doing a little bit of drawing is good and kind of fun. Just breaks things up a little bit. And I also think that it's a great way to see how you progress, to compare your old drawings to your new drawings. And there are a lot of ways also to approach drawing. So sometimes you start with shading and you shade in those areas, and you start that way. Or maybe you start like we did with our big shapes. I mean, I think that's always wise to do as you are learning. I mean, just to get it placed on the paper. That's a perfect way to get it placed on a paper so you're not off your page drawing something. Thanks, Jan. I appreciate that. Where are we time-wise? All right, so we have 15 minutes. How are you guys doing? Maybe because we have a little bit of time, And you can kind of see in, oh, maybe you can't here. You can kind of see the difference between the two of these drawings. This one's a little bit bigger. And drawing a little bit bigger is a little bit more helpful when we are getting started. So I think because we have a little bit of time, I might do a little bit of shading. So you can assess, we've hit some of these darker spots in this bird. Let's see here. Now I wouldn't go in and make everything extremely dark or extremely light necessarily, but you can kind of start shading. Like that's just, I kind of love these pencils because then I can really start shaping the bird. So I'm going to try to work pretty quickly for the time that we have remaining. We have this nice shadow under here that probably comes about here. Whoops. So we've looked at the shape of things. Now we're looking to shape things with shading. And there's this nice shadow here. But when I look at the shape of that shadow, I can just kind of sketch a line in there to see, well, where am I going to shade up to? Because we have this nice area here that's touched by light. Now, this is pretty light as I'm sketching it in, but we can start kind of with this mid-tone and then work a little bit darker. And when I look at this feather here, it kind of comes this direction, so you can shade this direction too. Kind of draw in some of those edges of the feather. Now I obviously need to be a little bit darker with my shading there, but it's okay, we can kind of develop this. We also want to note that there is a shadow underneath this wing, so just note that. Know that you'll come back to that. We have some shading here. And some darker shading here. Of course, these feathers are a little bit darker. We have this cast shadow here, where this is laying on top of that. Okay, we also have this cast shadow. Like this really gets you looking at things because maybe you might not see them otherwise, but we have these feathers are casting this shadow here. So we can lightly sketch that in. I usually try when I am doing my own, like when I'm painting or drawing, I sort of shoot for 5 levels of value. So you have your darkest, your lightest, and then maybe 3 tones in between. And I really think about that when I paint. I think it helps, you know, I really shoot to have a little bit more dimension when I am painting. And if, you know, sometimes it's beneficial on a piece of paper to draw 5 squares and draw in your darkest, maybe your lightest, and then those shades in between, so you can refer back to that to see, hey, how am I doing for my values? So I'm just kind of looking at the shading here, continually assessing. A lot of this is, I mean, this is pretty white. This is the whitest part of my paper. In our feathers here, they're pretty light as far as, you know, this is the whitest part, so you're going to note that because, you know, everything else will be darker than that. You can sketch that in or crosshatch that, and you know, it's nice when you're sketching if your brush strokes kind of go the direction that maybe the feathers go. It gives it a nice texture. Again, if you're drawing on your watercolor paper and you're like, hey, I'm not going to shade this because I'm going to shade it with paint, that's all fine. But it's nice to do these studies, so when we do hit a painting, you know, we've been there, done that, and you can really inform your piece. Now I can see, like, when I squint my eyes, I guess this is another thing we need to talk about too. When you're looking at an image and you're not sure about the value, squint your eyes or use Procreate and make it your image a little bit blurry. And this really helps you discern what the darkest bits are. Where are the darkest parts, the lightest parts? Because we get really caught up sometimes in the details. And when we are looking at value, whether you're oil painting or drawing, it really helps you discern value. Like when I squint, I can see that this area is darker than, say, some of this area below it. How are we doing on time? We've got about 5 more minutes before I should let you go, because y'all, some of you are on the East Coast. So you notice I'm kind of sitting back, assessing things. We have a nice shadow here underneath this wing, and I could define these wings a little bit better, I see. We have some shading here. What I really love to do when you really get cooking on a drawing is to be able to use your kneaded eraser to pull out, you know, light areas, or maybe have like wing, you know, little feathers here that maybe you want to highlight. It's great to be able to use your little eraser for that. So now I'm just going to try to sketch in some of our shading. You can continue to work on this if you want to. And this actually kind of curves around. Sometimes you have to look at the shape, and I'm not always right. That's why it's helpful to cite with a straight edge somewhere, whether it's a pencil or a drawing tool. And having a dark edge near a light colored edge can help define both of those things. So keep that in mind as you're working too. Kind of dragging my hand through here, so occasionally you might clean up an edge. Of course, you can see this portion of the branch. Some of it is in shadow, bird shadow. Also, the shadow might inform you of where the foot is. Okay, so as we're closing in on our time, what questions do you have for me? Throw them in chat. And then next week, as we meet privately for our class, come with your bird, sketch on your watercolor paper. So you can either use your sketch or you can use it for reference. And come with your watercolor paper ready to rock and roll. We'll do a little painting. So there is this cast shadow here. So I can darken this a little. A lot of these can be darkened a little. But you're always kind of looking at that and assessing that. You can also, kind of like sketch in here and use your eraser to help shape things there. I really enjoy spending a little bit of time in the sketchbook. Of course, I am a wildlife and equine painter, so my happy spot really is with birds and little creatures, but whatever it is that makes you happy, it's really useful to keep a sketchbook and to do some drawing along with your painting. I really believe 100% that drawing is like, I don't know, 75% observation and just exercising your observation skills. I mean, I have a lot of shading to do here. I just keep looking and I keep seeing stuff. And you can start going in a little bit darker in some of these areas. And it really starts shaping how things look. And sometimes different artists sometimes approach that a little bit differently. Sometimes artists will go in with the darkest dark first. I kind of like to build my way there. But I always think that it is advisable to at least sketch in the eye, at least shade it in a little bit, because things look a little weird when you don't get the eye in there. I could keep going, but you get the drill. Again, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments there. And let's see here. Switch up my camera view. Yeah, as you can see, the lighting situation is a little bit funky here in the studio today, but thanks so much for tuning in. If you do have questions or comments or you're part of the Watercolor Rockstar Paint Club, go ahead and leave me questions in our Facebook group. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to paigeweber.net. Thanks for being here tonight. I hope that you enjoyed this exercise, and I really encourage my students. I'd love to see them. If you're willing to share, go ahead and throw them in our classroom. You might need a little extra time to work as well, so please feel free to take that time that you need. And thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight, and I will see you all next week, and I'll see you all on YouTube next month. I think we will probably do another drawing exercise so we can do some painting. All right. Hey, thanks, Jan. Nice to see you. Well, not technically see you, but nice to hang out with you tonight and do some drawing. Okay, everybody, take care, and I will see you later.